In this video, we're going to look at all things to do with preparing your catalog or price list to load it into Buildxact. Now, this video focuses solely on catalog item lists, meaning that the lists we're dealing with are simply just a list of price items, as opposed to the Buildxact recipes, which you can also import. So just to make that distinction, we're dealing with the very, very standard type of price list that 99.9% of our imports are going to be. Now we're starting with this template, which I've pulled out of one of our help articles. With this template, what it's designed to do is give you an idea of the structure or how it's needing to look when we bring it into Buildxact, as well as giving you an idea of what stuff you actually want to bring in. So I'm going to run through this, then we're going to go through an example list and get it into the right format, and that will answer hopefully a whole bunch of questions about getting it into the right layout before we load it, and avoiding some headaches that may arise out of the incorrect formatting. So things that I would suggest, I would absolutely bring a supplier code. So this might be a SKU number or an item number, whatever you want to call it. I would highly recommend having a column for this if you have that available. Description. This is absolutely mandatory. We need to know what an item is called, so you need a column for that. Note that as I'm going across, we have the little examples down the bottom, so keep your eyes on those as well. Unit cost. This is the price without tax. We absolutely need that. Unit of measure. This is how it's measured, whether it's per box, per item, per meter, per square meter, per sheet, what have you. We need to know. Then we get into the recommended things. Category and subcategory are ways of grouping a list. So in the example that we're about to do, which is this one, I would be looking at things like slab materials or cement products as the grouping, or hardware. We can also have the idea of 2 layers. So where I was just showing the list there and we had concrete or sheeting, that would be a category, but we can also go a layer deeper, where we can have, for example, timber and then structural or dressed or different types of timber as the subcategory. So you can break it down to 2 levels. Personally, I recommend definitely a category. Subcategory is a bit of a bonus. Item type. This is quite useful. However, for the majority of suppliers we deal with, they only supply material, i.e. you're an item supplier. You don't really supply a labor. You may, on occasion, have equipment, but this is basically a column to say the items that we are supplying are of type, material, or equipment. Rarely would suppliers use subcontractor or labor unless you supply that. Then we get into the optional things. My advice is for the optional items, don't worry too much about them. I think that the amount of work you've got to prepare this is probably enough already. And for what we do with these extra columns, I don't see a huge amount of benefit just yet. The only exception to that rule is where we get to image URL. So when we look at my example list again, this one has images loaded to it, which is awesome. However, loading it directly into Buildxact, we can't use these images. We can only use the links to an image file, and then we grab that image from there. That's what image URL is. So here in my example, I've got a column specifically for the URLs of the image. So I might have gone to a website, maybe even your website, and got the link of that image and popped it into here. And that way, when we're loading it, Buildxact will go to those websites and steal all the images. This is probably the only one I would suggest out of the optional ones that's worth considering, as it's a really easy way to bulk import images. Of the other ones, there's yeah, I probably wouldn't suggest that you really delve too deep into these, especially at first. Great. So what does that mean for an actual catalog? Well, what I've got here is my example one, and I've also got a blank list or blank Excel sheet open. Now, the way I typically do this is I copy all of this into a new sheet. So I've just gone Control C to copy, although you could absolutely go right click, copy, it's the exact same thing. And I go paste specifically just as values. The reason I do this is if you've got any formulas, this gets rid of it. If you've got any fancy formatting, this gets rid of it. This just simplifies the list a lot and means that there's less chance of Buildxact tripping over something. If Excel does this 9.35 E12, it's basically just a number format. You can still see the number is correct. Don't worry about that at all. So what I would do for this is I would try and get as many of these sheets together as possible. Note that we've got the category up the top. So what I'm going to do is make an extra column for category and basically go slab materials, paste, and put it the entire way down, which is to say that if I read this only one line at a time, I can see this line here is category slab materials, that's the code, that's the item, that's the price, and I'm probably going to remove some of these prices because there's a few more than we need. But what I would do is grab that, go back to this one. I'm doing this on one screen, but if you do have the option to do it on two screens, it is a whole bunch easier, I think. And then I'm going to grab all of that, cement products, pop it just below. And again, I'm going to do that again. I should have done the correct thing of going values. Beautiful. I'm going to put this over here, drag it down using that little dot on the bottom corner. I'm not too worried about blank cells for now. I'm going to get rid of those shortly. And I'm going to do it again. And one thing that I mentioned before is that the pasting as values gets rid of formulas. And I have just noticed that this sheet does actually have formulas in it. So I'm glad I've done that. Let's go there. And drop it down the bottom. Get that hardware cell, put it over here, drag it down. And the reason I've done it this way is I've got all the pages that look the same, so I can basically bulk fix them. Now what I'm going to do here is go, well, the columns I need are actually only the excluding GST. I don't care about how much tax is on it. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. So I can quite easily go that one, that one, that one, delete all of them. Change this. And that will do it for all of them, which is awesome. The thing we're missing, as if you were paying attention to the earlier sheet, we're missing unit of measure. There's no column that we've got in there for this. So I'm going to add that. And what you can generally do is make kind of broad brush strokes here. So my default will be each. Unless I'm told otherwise, I'll say each for everything. The exception is when you get into things like timber, where it is per linear meter. So some of these are going to need updating. And you're probably getting the sense here that the more information you can pull out when you do your initial export, the less you have to mess around with this. So this is per linear meter. I'm going to say that one's linear meter, that one's meter, that one. And if, like I just mentioned, if I'd pulled this out of my system when I exported it, I wouldn't need to be doing this little step. So that's 36 meters. Those all look fine. They're all per length. That's per length. That's per length. That's per length. That all looks fine. Great. Happy with that. Beautiful. What I'm then going to do is, now that is kind of sort this list out. And there's a number of ways to do this. You can manually go and delete it. I try and be a bit more clever about this. I go and number them all, which is to give it an order. And I just double click that dot, which basically expanded all that counting right to the end. And then I go and basically look for blank cells. So I will go filter all of this A to Z, which means that it puts everything alphabetical and leaves all of these blank things at the end, which is nice. I can just go delete all of those. Then I will sort again by this, smallest to largest, which basically puts it back in order. And all that's really done is sort it alphabetical to remove all the items at the bottom, sort it back into this order, which puts it back into the original order minus all the blank cells. Sometimes it does this where it drops the headings at the bottom. You just pop it up here. I'll delete my numbering. I no longer need that. Now this would actually be right ready to go in now. That's perfect. If I wanted to be extra astute here, I would just check the length of some things. I have no reason to be concerned here because none of these look too long. When you're looking at cells that are too long, they're generally like out here. Like that's a really long cell. But I just want to show you how I would check for this. If I go equals len bracket, you can see the little formula in there. It'll tell me how many characters are in that, and I can double click it and it'll do it for all of them. We're looking for anything over 250. Anything over 250 won't load. So my trick here is I often go conditional formatting, highlight cells. So I've highlighted the whole column. I'll go conditional formatting, highlight cells greater than 250. And you'll see it highlights anything that's got an error. Nothing for me looks concerning, so I'll delete that again. Another thing worth a quick mention is duplicate code numbers will cause headaches. So I sometimes do the same thing for the code column, just to say highlight cells where they have a duplicate value. And you can see that's actually highlighted to me that I forgot to remove all the headings. Get rid of that, and there we go. And actually, I do have an example to show here because these two are the same. For whatever reason, these two are in the list twice. That would cause a bit of a headache for the loading process. It would show you that error, but I'm going to delete that just so I don't have a double up. Now, I'm going to go back to my example for one final point, and that is, what do I do about this with the images? And simply put, I'm going to copy all of this, pop it into a new thing, pasting the values only. That will get rid of all of the images. And the way this has been formatted is quite, well, will need a bit of work. It's quite unusual. So what I'm going to do is go, to here, use this as the category. This is the description, and it's just a matter of putting it into the right format. So that's the item number. We've got two different item numbers. I'm going to, as a supplier, you'll hopefully know which one you want to use, but I'm going to just make an assumption that that one doesn't need to be used. This is how it's measured. There's no headings for this, which is, again, a bit confusing, but this looks like piece. What is this? Basic SSS. This could also be the color, but I'm going to assume it's how it's measured. There, and I'm just going to start adding headings. So this final page, this gives an example of kind of the worst formatting that you might come across. If you are looking through this and going, wow, this is a bit of a headache, the absolute gold standard of getting this information out is complete, just clean export from your data system or database. We don't need formatting. We don't need images. In fact, the more raw the data is, the better it is for us. Two final headaches to conquer here. This one has tax in it. I need to remove that. I need to go equals that divided by 1.1. So here I'm obviously assuming an Australian supplier of 10% GST. In New Zealand, it'd be 1.15. If you're in North America, you'll have different tax rates. You'll need to figure that out. So I'm going equals E5 divided by 1.1, and I'm dragging this all the way down. In fact, I'll probably just use the little dot. Oops. Let's expand that. Awesome. Now, this has formulas in it. As soon as I delete this column, it's going to go haywire. So I need to go copy or Control C, paste as values, which removes the formulas, and then delete. And lucky last, I need to go and pull these down so that they sit next to the row. I've developed a way of doing this because I find it a little time consuming to do these one by one. So what I do is go, and I'll talk you through this, but if the formula goes over your head, then you can do it manually. I go if that, the symbol of, so the less than and then greater than, that means is not. So if B3 is not equal to, that symbol equals, so that the double quotation marks equals nothing. So if B3 is not equal to nothing, then I want to use the value from B3. And if not, I want to use the value from A2. And what that means is, in this case, it's gone, great, there's something in there, I'll steal it. If I get to this one, it's checked this cell, drag that over. It's checked this cell and gone, well, there's nothing in there. I'll take the one from above. And this is just a quick way of having it fill like that. And again, copy and paste as values to get rid of the formulas so that I can delete this without column A going mental. Lucky last is I'm going to number this to get rid of blanks. And delete those two. And I'm going to filter A to Z, which will throw all the blank ones to the bottom. Off they go. I should clarify this. It may be concerning that I'm deleting so many, but remember, I had a formula that just assigned these categories to each row, and there's going to be a lot of rows where there was no description. So there, hence, is a lot of these category rows that just are nothing, and that's the ones I'm deleting. So I'm not actually removing anything legitimate. Smallest to largest, puts it back in order, and we'll delete that. This is the category, and assuming this matches the other book I've got, which goes category code description cost. Category code description cost, I'll go cut and insert cut cells. I'll just put that there. That is now the same order. I could now bring that in, copy it across to the other sheet, pop it at the bottom. Now I've got one sheet where everything is in the right order. All the columns are consistent. And just because I've added new items, I'm going to do one quick double check, triple check to make sure there's no duplicates in this column, which I don't think there should be. Beautiful. So that is 100% ready to go. And we will have other content elsewhere on how to actually load that.